Hi, I'm Kyle with New Gamer Nation. I'm here today with Mike Zaimont. He's the design director at Lab Zero Games, and we're going to talk about Indivisible, which is Lab Zero's newest effort, currently seeking funding on IndieGoGo. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm all right. A little tired, but that happens.
Why don't you go ahead and give me just the log line for Indivisible? Tell me a little bit about the game and what you're trying to do.
All right. Indivisible is a 2D action RPG, but it's pretty much, and I mean, every developer always says this all the time, but it's unlike anything that's ever been made before.
What was the impetus for the decision to move away from fighting games into a side-scrolling action RPG?
Well, the impetus, there were actually a couple of them. So a main one was the fact that even during the development of Skullgirls, most of the people on the team don't seriously play fighting games. For the next project, we'd like to try to do something that the entire team can participate in at all levels, right? Which was really important. So the reason that we picked action RPG was it was one of the things that everybody on the team could agree on, but it was also like we had a phase where everybody proposed game ideas that would be a cool thing for them personally to try next. And then like everybody on the team read them, and this was the one that like every single person who read it was like, oh man, I could totally get behind this. Because there were some that were like, 3 or 4 people were like, oh yeah, wow, that would be really awesome. But this was the one where like everybody on the team just said, holy crap, I could totally do this. It's inspired by Super Metroid in that pretty much all of the upgrades that you get for your character, like new weapons and all this other stuff, are useful as movement abilities. You get, I mean, in the prototype, you get the axe, which in most RPGs would just be now you can chop through things that you couldn't chop through before, so you can go to the other side of this barrier. But we also give you axe climb, which lets you move around in the world in a new way that you previously weren't able to do. And every other upgrade, even for bare hands, for the other 3 weapons that we didn't put in the prototype because it's a prototype, and for the axe, will all give you new ways to move around in the worlds and new ways to get to places that you couldn't get to before, not just like one ability and then letting you do a different attack animation in battle. I love Valkyrie Profile. I mean, there are, as with everything that tried a completely new approach to any genre of game, there are things that it could have done better. But for there never having been a game that worked like that before, they did an amazing job. And I mean, the plot is fantastic and the art is fantastic. The music is amazing. So I loved Valkyrie Profile, but the thing that I found most intriguing about it was the fact that your party was basically a customizable fighting game character. First of all, you fight in real time. So you press, I mean, in Valkyrie Profile, the way it works is it's strictly turns, right? It's the enemy goes and then you go and then the enemy goes. In Indivisible, it's ATB based. You have bars that build up, and when one is available, that character can go. So if any character has an attack, you can go with them. If multiple characters have an attack at the same time, you can go with them. There are benefits to waiting. There are also benefits to going right away. Taking the Valkyrie Profile battle system and doing basically what I thought it was going to be when I saw it played without being able to play it when I was like 15. I'm really excited to have been able to do that because there's a lot of depth that you get out of being able to attack with the characters yourself. But yeah, you can totally dodge stuff with platforming. Even if you want to play like 100%, by the time in the prototype you have all of your characters and they all have 3 attacks, at that point there is no reason to fight anything else except for the boss. So there are several enemies that you can dodge if you're skillful about platforming. There are lots of, I guess, extra enemies that you can fight if you enjoy the combat system. But if you're really just trying to like speed run it, you can totally skip a lot of stuff.
What kind of story are you trying to tell? Rather than talking about specifics of the plot, what are the themes that were identified by the team that you wanted to get across in the final product? And do you think that the animated style helps complement the narrative and message of the game?
A lot of people have asked us why the hell we chose that title. If you live in the US, it's a word that you were made to say every day for your entire childhood.
That's right. Hand over the heart.
Yep. Which is an interesting non-separation of church and state, but I'm not going to get into that.
It is. That's a separate interview, but
But yeah, so one of the reasons that we chose that title is because one of the very central themes for the game is empathy. You end up talking to the incarnations that you meet and absorb, but it isn't just that. It's also from the other side, you get to know someone who basically doesn't talk to anybody and has only their one perspective and causes problems as a result. So it's very much not the narrative of like I am the hero and I am going to make all of the correct decisions and then I am going to slay this dragon and then I am going to save the world. It is definitely not a game about I.
This isn't the first time that you guys have experimented with crowdfunding. You crowdfunded a DLC character for Skullgirls, and actually well over that. You got around $830,000 of $150,000 goal, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
How does the feedback from such a vocal crowd who feels invested in their donation to the project they donated to, how does that feedback affect the development of the game, if at all?
There were a lot of parts of Skullgirls development that were very trying. That was definitely not one of them. That was amazing, and it was something that I wish more games would do, and it was something that we totally want to do again. The amount of creative freedom that you get when you don't have to satisfy executives and you don't have to satisfy focus groups and you don't have to satisfy marketing is unbelievable when you've worked in an environment where you do have to do those things. Well, yeah, like one of the questions that we got asked a bunch of times when we were pitching Skullgirls to people is like, what is your target audience? And our only answer was, people that play fighting games, like people that will find it fun. I mean, we never had to do the thing where like, we're going to give the main character these traits because it appeals to males 18 to 35. And we're going to make sure that he has big empathetic eyes so that all the female audience will feel immediately enamored with him. You know, like we don't have to do that kind of crap. And I love it.
It's nice to have the freedom, I'm sure, but is it scary not to have a major publisher kind of breathing down the necks saying, hey, this needs to get done now so we meet the deadline?
Not at all. Because I mean, one of the other major things that we did with the Skullgirls campaign that we like basically made our business model and want to continue is to treat the backers as if they're investors, right? Tell them everything, positive and negative. I immensely prefer that. I can't properly express in words how much nicer it was to work on something like this. I was kind of scared initially because I was wondering how much of the like, I gave you $15, I want everything right now, there was actually going to be, you know, but there wasn't a whole lot of that. I mean, there were occasionally people who were like, I bought your crap and I didn't like it and I want my money back. And okay, fine. Or like, I disagree with this decision that you're making. Cool, let's have a conversation about it.
Do you see yourself down the line as a team or as an individual? Do you see yourself being able to continually crowdfund games and putting money from the last project in these new projects and partnering with publishers like 505?
Money from the last project? I'm like, yeah. I'm all right. So I'll answer your question, but I'm going to start with that. There is no leftover money, man. Like, that's not how this works. We crowdfunded an amount for doing the thing that we said we were going to do. We didn't crowdfund an amount for doing the thing that we said we were going to do and then spend half of it. We did not receive any, like Lab Zero and the people that were not Autumn did not receive any royalties on anything Skullgirls until last July. So 3-something years after the game came out. That was initially part of the deal because if you want to get a publisher and you've never made a game before, not only do you need to give up the IP, you also have to kind of screw yourself on rights right. Because they're giving you money, and that's how business works in the US. I mean, also part of the crowdfunding was paying ourselves at like slave wages. So I'm down money after having worked on the Skullgirls crowdfunding stuff. I don't mind it because I was doing something that I really enjoyed and it was an environment that I would never find at a larger company.
So do you think it's sustainable then? I mean, do you think that model of, like you said, I mean, obviously being hyperbolic, but slave wages, living off of so little, I mean, is that appealing to enough people that you can see yourself doing this indefinitely, or would eventually you need to say, hey, I want to make some money for real, and if that means sacrificing some creative freedoms to work with a major publisher again, then I guess that's what I need to do.
I personally kind of never want to do that again. Like, so I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's sustainable because there have been so many previous crowdfunding campaigns that set unrealistically low expectations for what it actually costs to make a game, where they had publishers waiting already, or they had 90% of their funding before they started, so they were only asking for a small portion of what it actually took. We are trying to find out with Indivisible whether or not it can be sustainable, because this project, first of all, includes an amazing deal from 505. Like, I frankly am really surprised that they agreed to some of the things that they agreed to help us out. We are trying to raise the real budget for a video game. Like with Skullgirls, we said before we started, what is the minimum that everybody is willing to work for? And some people went below their actual minimum just because they really wanted to work on the game so that they could give us lower numbers. I mean, I was one of the people that did that. But with Indivisible, it was, okay, what do we actually need? If you look at the game developer salary survey, the most senior category they have for programmers is people with 6 years of industry experience. The average salary for that, either last year or 2 years ago, was something like $120,000 or $130,000 a year, which is like half the people that they surveyed make more than that, right? Yeah. I'm not even close to that. Like, on Skullgirls, I think I was making like a 45 or 50K equivalent. My introductory, like, junior programmer salary at Pandemic was 65. On Indivisible, we're asking for like sustainable salaries. So like, we came up with the real budget for what we think that this game is going to cost. And it's the entire budget, which is another thing that crowdfunding projects generally don't do, right? This isn't give us $300,000 and we'll make the first level, right? This is, if we get to the 1.5 million, then 505, as a result of us getting there, will basically double that. They'll give us an extra 2 million, which is an amazing deal. We don't get anything if we don't get there, but they'll give us an extra 2 million, which makes 3.5, which is the actual budget for like a 2-year development game. The whole game, right? All of it, all of the extra secrets, all of the extra everythings that we want to include that make the full game. It's not, here's a small goal for the first part here. And if like, because if you do that and you only reach that goal, then you only make the first part, and that sucks. We have basic designs for the acts of the game. We know some of the major points that we want to hit, but like we always talk. I mean, everybody on the team is basically equals when it comes to providing feedback or suggesting improvements or doing anything else. And this surprised several of the people that we have had to work with as outside people, because they've come from environments where you kind of rigidly respect authority. And like, we had someone say, like, after a couple of weeks of working with us, like, he told me, like, oh, I wasn't listening to you because I didn't know that you were the owner of the company. And I was like, that doesn't matter at all. Like, that here, that is totally irrelevant. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. If it's a bad idea, it's a bad idea.
Was the decision to return to IndieGoGo purely based off of, oh, we already have a fan base, we've established this, we know how this works, or was there any consideration put into using another platform at all?
There was consideration put into using other platforms. Basically, so there were a couple of reasons that we went with IndieGoGo. Number one, they were really helpful to us on Skullgirls. There's a large negative IndieGoGo sentiment now, and we didn't really know about that at the time. I guess a large part of it comes from the fact that since IndieGoGo allows flexible funding, which Indivisible is not, right? If we don't make the goal, everybody gets their money back. But since IndieGoGo allows flexible funding, which means if you ask for $1,000 and you get $5, you still keep that $5. People like look at it as the anti-Kickstarter, where if you don't think you can raise all of your money, then you do a flexible funding campaign on IndieGoGo and see what you can get. And there have been a fair number of shady flexible funding campaigns on IndieGoGo. There are several pluses to using IndieGoGo. All you need is an email address. We've had a lot of people be like, I don't want to go make an account on another site. You don't have to do that. Kickstarter, you do need an account. IndieGoGo, you need an email address and credit card information. The second thing is IndieGoGo, as soon as you pledge, takes your money. And then if the project fails, they refund it. Right? Whereas Kickstarter, at the end of the project, takes your money. And until then, you can pledge whatever you want. As the people raising the money, the fact that IndieGoGo makes sure that that money is available when you pledge is a huge plus. So like people have mentioned that as a plus for Kickstarter, like a ton, but as a campaigner, like it's not a plus for you at all.
As a game player as well as a game developer, what would you want to see other developers be influenced from your title? Like what mechanic or what aesthetic, or what would you want them to take from the title and incorporate into their own games, or be inspired by the same way you were inspired by Valkyrie Profile and Metroid?
If Indivisible actually got to influence other developers in any way, I would really like to show that it is still possible to make a skill-based action RPG and like focus on players enjoying the game rather than anything else. You get so caught up. I've seen this a lot on development teams. You get so caught up in the minutia of working on the game and like, does this character's attack hit overhead? Is this telegraphed properly? All this other stuff where like you forget that your single goal as a game developer, there is no other real goal. Your single goal is to provide something fun to the people who paid money for the thing that you're making. We tried to do that with Skullgirls. We are trying to do that with Indivisible, and I would like very much, because like you said about Grand Theft Auto 5 and all this other stuff, like when you get to huge budgets, the thing that you're trying to do is guarantee that you'll be able to make that money back, right? If it's derivative, you don't care. If it's like this other thing, you don't care. If it's another brown walls, gray skies, first person shooter, you don't care. If you can guarantee to your marketing people and to your PR people that you will make back the initial investment, that is what is important. I want, as we did with Skullgirls, where we branched out into new things that fighting games had not experimented with before, like the infinite prevention system and all the rest of the stuff that we added. With Indivisible, I would like to show that it is still possible to make innovative games that have never been done before, with approaches that have never been taken before, and be fun, so that possibly like other companies would take more risks or would do something that they initially wouldn't have thought to do.
I think that probably just about wraps up the questions that I have for you, Mike. But hey, I really do appreciate your time and a lot of really great stuff there. I appreciate you talking to me.
Sure. I mean, like one of the things that I've always wanted to do ever since I was working in video games is be able to be transparent about everything. So I'm finally in a position where I can do that. So like, even if Indivisible is not successful, the thing that I would like to be able to do myself as a person is be able to bring more transparency to video games, be able to have the people that are backing crowdfunding drives or buying video games or making decisions about video games or talking about video games or anything, be able to know more about what goes into game development and to learn about the process and to be able to ask questions to somebody who's been through the whole thing. Like, I want to educate people about what actually happens so that less of the interaction is guessing.
You can go play a playable prototype right now on IndieGoGo.
Yeah, you don't have to donate to do that.
That's right. And how many more days are left in the campaign right now?
I think it's 28, but I don't have the page open, so it's something like 28.
Okay, well, there's still time to back it if you're interested. Thank you so much, Mike, for your time.
Thank you.